we're going to experience meltdowns and chaotic situations. And I do believe we will experience in our lifetime, sooner than later, an attack that looks much more like October 7th than 9/11. It's coming. You know, you're going to do things that could haunt your dreams, man. But it's not about revenge. It's about the people you love and protecting the people you love.
Welcome to the American Soldier Podcast. I'm really excited to talk to a friend of mine who I've had on the podcast before and somebody who I find incredibly inspiring. He's retired Lieutenant Colonel Scott Mann. He's a former US Army Green Beret, and besides being a decorated combat vet and someone who's been part of Special Forces, he's an amazing storyteller. He's written 2 amazing books, and he's written 2 beautiful plays. His first book is called Operation Pineapple Express, and it talks about the insane withdrawal out of Afghanistan. His other book is called Nobody's Coming to Save You, and it's a great book on leadership. His first play, Last Out, an elegy for Green Beret, has been traveling the country, and it's been helping veterans heal, and it's a multi-character play, and it's a beautiful play on service and sacrifice. And this new play is called 11 Days, and it's based off Operation Pineapple Express, and it's a one-man show. So Scott's jumping into my world. So I'm really excited to talk to Scott about his play and about the process. And I just find Scott really inspiring because every time you turn your head, he's coming out with a new project. The guy can produce some serious content. And I'm really excited to talk to him and to have him back on the podcast. So let's jump in. So thanks for coming on, brother.
My honor. Thank you for having me.
No, it's my pleasure. You just came out of rehearsals, right?
We did. We just knocked off probably 30 minutes ago.
Oh, wow. Now, how'd it go?
It's good. You know, I'm still in that place where we're still trying to get the shape of it, and I'm off book just enough to feel like a fraud.
What you'll find is when you're doing, especially a one-man show, and I learned this firsthand, you know, when you're doing multi-character plays, you have a chance to catch your breath, you know, when someone else is going.
Yeah.
I remember when I first did The American Soldier in Scotland, I was like, oh, fuck, I still got 30 more minutes to go. You know, and you're like, whew, you know, you hit this endurance when you first do it, you hit this endurance, like the end of your endurance that you have as an actor, and then you know it gets stronger really fast. But when you first run into it, you're like, all right, here we go. One man show.
That's the way I feel. But it certainly doesn't look that way when you do it now, man. Like it looks like just a constant flow state, which is what I aspire to do. It was so. And I know I've told you this before, but like, I'm not kidding. Like it was probably one of the most impactful things artistically that I did in my creative process for the show was to come see yours. Like that inspired me. It gave me, you know, and then the graciousness that you had to sit with me and give me notes. But that's the gold standard, brother.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. It means a lot coming from you, Scott. I mean, I find you very inspiring. I mean, I always talk to younger actors about taking action with their careers because at the end of the day, I'm really an actor, and I've somehow, hook or crook, I've got on, got on this artistic journey of honoring veterans. I think God had a different plan for me than I did, and that's true a lot of times. But I mean, the stuff that you crank out some stuff, dude. I mean, you crank out. I mean, when you wrote a play, you wrote 2 books, and then when I texted you, like, I just finished this one-man show, like, Jesus, man, when does this guy sleep, man? I mean, because I get sometimes people tell me, like, man, what's your endurance like? And I'm like, I'm looking at you, and I'm like, what does this guy do? Is he on speed or something? Or like, what's he doing, man?
I think that I talked to a lot of guys that were in the global war on terror, particularly in the special ops world. And, you know, because I get that a lot, even from Monty, my wife. She's like, babe, I mean, damn, come on, you know? And it's sometimes I think like there's something wrong with me, you know, like there's something that doesn't switch off like when it's supposed to. And kind of the more I've dove into like the whole operator syndrome and things like that, I think there's actually something to that. I'm probably not the right person to speak to it, but I do think that, like, for me, something clicked in the global war on terror of just going for like a decade. And it became a way of being in the world that like that's just your tempo.
Yeah.
And then coming home, where shit gets dangerous for me is if I am still for too long, or if I'm in my head for too long. Like that's just not good. I haven't figured out how to tolerate myself enough to do that. I want to, and I'm getting better, but if I'm moving,
you're good with chaos, but when you get quiet, the chaos takes over for you.
it's like I have to create chaos. And I do. Like I've been like, there's things I've done to just blow up my own life with my wife and my kids because I don't know how to tolerate myself. And I've gotten a long way past that, I think, in some regards, but mostly it's been learning how to like move that energy into something else. But I've still got a lot to learn.
Do you feel like you're substituting work for not allowing the demons to kind of kick in?
But it doesn't feel like work. That's the difference. It doesn't feel to me like work. It feels fulfilling. Yeah, it just feels really good. And honestly, now that Monty and I are empty nesters, man, we travel everywhere together. We spend I love spending time with my wife. And so if it's on the road, if it's hanging out at our house, I'm kind of cool either way. I want to be home more, but on the creative side, I don't know. I just feel like, and here's the other thing, and I'll say this. The buddies that I lost, man, they left this world way too young. And I feel like I need to skid that friggin' car in sideways for more than just me. Like I want to live for buddies of mine that didn't come home and not take anything for granted. And that feels good to me. That doesn't feel forced or wrong, or like you said, like maybe I don't feel like I'm like running from stuff as much as I'm just when I'm creating, I just feel in flow and it feels good.
Yeah, you're not running from. Well, that's good because you're not because if you're running from something, eventually you're going to stop running and it's going to catch you. So if you're running to something, then it's good because that means you're being pulled into something that you want to go into.
That's what it feels more like. That's what it feels more like to me. And plus, I know you lost your dad and you guys were super close. I, lost my dad this summer. Yes. And that really opened my eyes a lot too, because he's my hero, and watching how he lived his life. He did his last podcast, like literally on the American Chestnut, like 2 weeks before he died. And God, it drove us crazy trying to get this podcast done, but he did it. And I've gone back and listened to it a couple of times. And like, I swear to God, he's signing off.
I remember when I said bye to my dad for the last time. I was performing in Houston, and my dad had a little bit of dementia, and he was out of shape, older. He was 84, and
yeah,
I was begging to get him to the show. I was performing in a theater in Houston, and I remember him going, "Oh, I'm really tired, son. Why don't you do the show and then come back and see me?" And I did, and biggest regret of my life is not grabbing his fat ass, sticking him in a cab and bringing him to the play. And I knew it was going to be challenging to bring him to the theater because he was overweight. He was having trouble walking. And, to get an 84-year-old man with a little bit of dementia who's out of shape into a theater seat it's tough. It's challenging. And I knew his endurance for an hour and a half was going to be tough to sit in a small space like that. So I let him win. But I remember when I left Houston and I gave him a kiss, I can still feel his stubbly beard on my face. And I remember thinking, it's so funny instinctively, and he knew, and we hugged really tight, and he kissed me really tight, and he said, I get emotional thinking about it, but he said, God bless you, son, and I love you very much. Never forget that. And 2 weeks later, I flew back to New York, and then 2 weeks later, he was gone. And it's funny, they know that. I think something is weird.
Yeah. I love the way you bring him like into your show, though. I can see like you like, it's, to me, maybe I'm making shit up, but like it seems to me like there's times when he's with you, you channel him. And I definitely feel that way about my dad. And the point I guess I was going to make was, he modeled for me what it looks like to run a race and skid the car in sideways and, give life hell all the way to the end. And man, I love it. I look at him and I think that's, if I can go out a fraction of like how he went out, that's what I want to do. I want to run. I want to skid the car in sideways, man. Um, and so that's kind of how I feel. That's the other thing that drives me. I loved your point about, and you've said this to me before, about just reinventing ways to put content out there when the industries don't necessarily, want you or provide the opportunities, whatever. I really look up to you for that. You're one of the, to me, you friggin', I think you're breaking new ground, honestly. We've talked about this before, but I really do. I think you're modeling not just for veterans, but also for the theater world and the artistic world. Like, you don't have to wait for the phone to ring.
No. In fact, if you do, you're committing theatrical suicide or spiritual suicide, because, and that's been true from the very beginning. It's become more truer now, but if you wait for the phone to ring, you're going to be waiting for a long time. And
Do you think that's getting worse or harder or?
yeah, without a doubt. Oh, yeah, it's getting. In fact, people like you who are taking action and creating, you're so ahead of the crowd. You're creating so many more opportunities. You're leapfrogging, literally by, this was leapfrog like by 10, by 20 people, because, and I talked to in fact, I talked to a friend of mine who we both studied with, Win Hanman. He was a really prestigious acting teacher in New York, and we studied in Carnegie Hall, and it was near Marlon Brando's old apartment. It was great in the early 2000s. It was really magical to be studying in Carnegie Hall and this historic theater teacher. And I said, "Hey man, who's still acting anymore that we came out of that class with?" He goes, "No one." Because it's just me and you. And I thought, and I talked to a lot of actors, and a lot of them drop out of the business because they don't have a project to keep going, right? They've been waiting by the phone stops ringing, and eventually they just say, the heck with this, I'm going to go do something else with my life because this is just waiting. And I've acted with people who've come out of, Juilliard, which is like this prestigious acting school, and they're not even acting anymore. And I know really good actors who came out of that program. I remember being on a video game on set with these two amazing actors who I knew were amazing from Juilliard, and we were both doing this freaking video game together. And I remember thinking, this is crazy. I'm on set with these guys, and I didn't go to Juilliard. I barely got into acting, and here are these prestigious, well-trained, theatrically. It'd be like, an infantry and a Green Beret and Navy SEAL guy all doing the exact same thing, and the infantry guy's been like, how the fuck am I with these two guys? So, but yeah, I think people like you are leapfrogging because your ability to like write books and to create content, like what you're doing right now with this new go ahead and state your one-man show right now. So we keep getting that out there.
Yeah, so thank you. It's called 11 Days, the story of Operation Pineapple Express. And it's a one-man, one-act show. It's about 75 minutes in length. It's adapted from the book Pineapple Express, Operation Pineapple Express, based on the botched Afghanistan withdrawal. And we're going to premiere it December 17 through 20 at the Hillsborough County Community College in Ybor City in Tampa. And then we're going to tour the country in 2026.
Yeah, and what you'll watch as you do this, and I tell this to actors, so it's weird because I know you're a veteran, but and with a very long experience in the military, extensive. But as I'm going to talk to you as an actor on this cast.
Yeah.
You're going to see incredible opportunities open up to you as an actor because of this one-man show. And opportunities that you would have never in a billion years would have ever imagined.
Right.
Because, the beauty, now the challenge with one-man shows, you think it's really low maintenance. It's actually sometimes even higher maintenance than a multi-character play because you're the one-man show and you're doing everything, right? And so there is no one else besides you, and you do a one-man show because I'm sure, as you know, as a producer, multi-character plays are really hard to deal with schedules and getting actor schedules together and getting everybody, hey, can you fly here on this date? Can you rehearse on this date? It's a fucking pain in the ass,
Big time.
Big time. And so when you do one character play, you're like, okay, it's just me, Scott, perhaps my wife, Monty, and that's it. But then, you got to do everything. You know, you got to you got to figure out your lights, you got to figure out your sound, you got to figure out your stage, what props you're going to bring. You know, make sure your props are ready, get yourself organized in the space. It's all you. And so, but with that, theaters love that because it's it's just cheap. It's a cheap play to produce, you know, and I think you're going to find a lot of piggyback opportunities from Last Out with this play.
Really?
And yeah, I without a doubt, I have 1,000%. You're going to find people who had theaters who had produced Last Out or invited Last Out. They're going to invite you back as a one-man show, and it's a great selling thing because hey, you guys remember Last Out? You remember that, you know, that beautiful piece by Scott Mann? Well, he's actually doing a one-man show now. And so you're going to get people who are interested to see, well, let me see this chick. Let me check this guy out by himself. I just promise you'll get opportunities that way.
Thank you, man. Congratulations off Broadway.
Yeah, it should be good. You know, I'm a little nervous about it, you know, because, you know.
What's the latest on that?
We preview the 28th of November and we close on the 21st of December.
Dude, that's so awesome.
Yeah, we're trying to get, you know, we're trying to make it really, I'm trying to get veterans involved and trying to get some organizations. I'm trying to talk to them, see if we can get you up there. You know, New York is very jaded. You know, especially New York, the New York today is not the New York that I remember. It's a very different New York. And so, but I'm really fortunate. The theater company, New York Theater Rep, and my producer, Jeff Kerner, they believe in the mission that I'm telling, and they believe what I believe in. And so they're really, they're just really supportive, and they're excited to tell this play to an audience in New York to see, you know, see if it resonates and see people.
What's like your expectation for it? Like, what's your hope for going off Broadway? Because I mean, you've done so much with this show, like in so many cool venues and big ones, small ones, but like always really hitting the hearts of the veteran community at a community level and educating. Like, is it a similar goal for something like a pinnacle like this off Broadway, or does the goal change?
You know, I tell you, I don't know. I think for me, if I had good houses every night, I'll be quite satisfied. If I had a dream, if I were to pick a dream, somebody from Broadway sees the play and says, you know, I like to do a short run of this on Broadway. You know, let's talk about doing a very short run of it. But I mean, that would be the ultimate dream. But if I have good houses and people are positively receptive to the play, I'll be really happy. I'll be really content. And it's weird because the play, I've never really had any expectations of it. And it seems when I have less expectations of the play keeps growing. And it's kind of this weird thing that if you have expectations of it, you kind of get in front of yourself and you start expecting too much. And then it's easy to get disappointed, right? Because you're just like, oh, I wanted, you know, this and I didn't get that. Where if you just focus on the artistry, focus on communicating, focus on being an artist, then I used to have a belief that acting gods always reward actors who are doing the work. And that if you just keep doing the work, the acting gods will reward you. And that's kind of been my motto with the play. And every year, I think it's the last time I'm doing it, Scott, I get a bigger booking. I mean, last year I thought was the last time. I had like 7 shows, including the Kennedy Center. And then this year I thought, I don't think anybody's going to do it. And, you know, I have 4 shows. And right before New York, I go to Minnesota to perform at the Reef Performing Arts Center, which is a beautiful space. And so, like you with Last Out, I wonder what the endurance is of the play because, you know, we're not at war, and you just wonder if people want to hear about it. I know veterans want to hear about it. I literally get messages daily from people who find me online and says, you know, when will you come to Columbus? When will you come to, you know, Minnesota? Wherever? And I know vets and military families want to hear the play, but unfortunately that doesn't always get the play there. So trying to look for some sponsorships and hopefully I'm successful, but let me ask you, are you doing the play? How are you doing your one-man show? Are you doing multi characters? Or are you just staying as Scott going through the story?
Yeah. So the way we're doing it is, I testified to the House Foreign Affairs Committee after
I saw that.
I wrote the book, and I was one of several that, including Tyler Vargas, who was just blown to pieces, and the Marine sniper, who had a shot at the suicide bomber.
Crazy.
Um, but I testified at that, and it bothered me. It bothered me that testimony I thought was just crap, in terms of how it was handled, how just so much political grandstanding on both sides of the aisle. I felt like they were just a bunch of mouth breathers, if I'm being honest. Like they were not, it was not worthy of the men and women that were sitting down up there in the benches testifying, who had given a lot to this 20-year war and were trying to represent really what went down on both sides of the pond. And I felt like that was not a real testimony. So when I adapted this script for a one-person play, I thought, I want to testify for real this time. I want this to be a testimony that I give that I didn't have the opportunity to do in there, that the grandstanding politicians didn't ask about, and that frankly is representative of friends of mine who have since taken their lives or who have just gone into complete bankruptcy or mental abyss because of staying on the world's longest 911 call.
Yeah.
I want to give that testimony. And so that was the inspiration of it. So it kind of set in my backyard by my fire pit. And I'm testifying around my fire pit because that's where I feel the most comfortable and where a lot of Pineapple Express happened for me, because I couldn't be around my family with it. But then I play, yes, multiple characters that are Afghans and also NATO troops, involved, because the Pineapple Express was a combined effort of veterans and active duty. And then, of course, the Afghans that were moving through that shit trench trying to get out. So I think I selected 3 or 4 Afghans as in the primary. Huh?
Nizam being one of them.
Nizam's half the play. So the play kind of flows, the rescue of Nizam. And then that's kind of like you think it's over. And then it was like, nope, phone's blowing up. Let's scale, and then that's when we actually became Task Force Pineapple and did that work at scale. So it's kind of both.
I love reading about him being a fitness nut.
Yeah. Oh man, he's a beast. He can run at one point, I'm pretty sure he was running a sub 5 mile.
Are you serious?
Mm-hmm. Wow. The dude is a beast. I mean, he could run a marathon fairly recently, sub 6.
How tall is he?
So he's short. He's like 5'3", if that.
He's tiny. So he's tiny, man. Yeah.
He's little. He's a stone cold killer, man.
No, I know. No, I don't mean tiny. I mean physically. Yeah. I think that as a marathon runner, that helps you being 5'3".
It does. He's very small and wiry. But so it's been really fun because you gave me a lot of good coaching on creating and occupying these characters, and that's really where I am right now. I'm really moving through that with a lot of intention. The good news is, because I wrote the book first and I had to interview these characters in great detail on Zoom, I've got a lot of exposure to them, but I've also got a lot of opportunity to go back and look at tape and watch them. But you gave me a lot of good coaching just in terms of music and animals and all those things to use as aids. And I'm doing all of that. So thank you.
Oh, no problem, man. I mean, and when you do a dialect, never be it. As I think I shared with this when you came and saw me up in Detroit, or near Detroit.
Yeah.
Your dialects don't have to be perfect.
Right.
It helps the audience. Audience like to see personas, and they like to see, oh, that's somebody different. Oh, that's interesting, and then it just allows your imagination to run with that. But when you're first creating it, you're going to be so self-conscious, but you get better with it. You start relaxing with it, and you just start relaxing. I think another good technique you could do, and it's painful to do, is to record yourself.
Yeah.
you like get a video camera doing one of your rehearsals, record yourself, and knowing your ass, you're probably going to do it, and you're probably going to execute on it like tomorrow.
Well,
But what happens is, you're going to have to watch it at least 3 times, right?
Okay.
The first time, it's just you're judging yourself at every second. You're like, oh my god, you're just like you can't even focus at, you're just affecting yourself. And I'll give you a piece of advice. As you're watching it, remember that no one else is watching it. This is re-recorded. That this is a piece of tape. It's a piece of footage. Because a lot of times you're watching and you're thinking, oh, fuck, it's everybody's seeing this, and this is horrible, but you have to remind yourself that it's just a piece of footage. It's just a file, and you're just watching it by yourself. Yeah. And the second time, you'll start to get notes about what's working and what's not working. And you'll start saying, oh, I like that. I can go further with that. And you will know what's working. Like, you're artistic. I think everybody is artistic. I think, and everybody anybody could be an actor. I think just some people, just for whatever different forks in their road, go a different fork,
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that.
But I think everybody has the artistic gene inside of them. But you'll start finding, tendency, your subconscious will start finding little things about your artist's voice, your gut, as Wendy used to say, will start speaking to you, and your gut will start telling you, I like that. And when you feel that, go in that direction. Your inner voice will tell you it's working, and go in that direction. And it's a good way to see, oh, I like my physicality there. I like what I do with my hand there. I can do more of that. I can do more with my voice there. I can work on that, and then you'll after this coming up performance in Tampa, you'll do it again, and you'll do it again, and it'll start getting sharper and sharper and sharper. And it's repetition is the mother of skill, It's like,
you're right.
The more you do it, it's the same thing about military. Repetition will. Yeah. You just need the reps, man.
I appreciate that. That's helped me a lot. And I look back on Last Out, and one of the things that I did take away to what you just said is, the first year it was just
awful.
Like it wasn't. It was not good. And I know that I was a weak link in that, because it was my first foray into acting, and there was all that stuff you're talking about, and I needed the reps, but we just kept repping. And this time around, I think I am easier on myself, in that I know this is going to take, it's not, hey, you're going to have the world premiere and it's going to be like, no, this is just the first of many reps of just grinding and getting it better. But I will say this, and this is where I think you and I have a lot in common, but one of the areas where we have, I am committed to this for the long haul. You know what I mean? That's the other great thing about a one man versus a I've loved Last Out, but damn, bro, trying to keep a cast together,
hard.
Holy shit, it's so hard. And they're great people. They're so committed, but they got lives and families and JOBs but Monty and I are like, hey man, we're in for the long haul on this one. And so that feels kind of good, to be honest with you. It feels good because I feel like I've got runway here. I'm not being casual about it, but I know that I'm playing the long game with this play, and I intend to do it that way, and just kind of go a little easier on myself as we develop it.
Yeah, a good phrase for you to remember is and I use this a lot, is be a nice coach to yourself. Which is tough coming from a military.
Not easy to do.
It's not easy. It's not easy to do for anybody, but for someone who's been in special ops, I'm sure being a nice coach is challenging. It's because you just want to come on, you piece of shit. Come on, you piece of shit. You suck. Come on. But you can't.
Yeah.
Acting is so weird. Acting is so, you can't win. He was a great teacher, and he's really how the American soldier got his start. But you can't push the acting, right?
No.
You can't. You can push the repetitions. You can say, I need another rep, so I'm going to do the show. I'm going to rehearse today. Go have lunch and come back and rehearse. You can do that, but You know, you can't push the emotion. You got to just let things kind of naturally, organically flow and let the moment happen. And whatever you're feeling on stage, I would say, Scott, is if you're feeling it, great. If you're not feeling something you want to feel, let that be great as well. Like, let that be its own thing and kind of look at it, you know, and also with a one-man show, you'll have this opportunity is when you're on stage, you're going to be nervous, or you're going to be going through your lines and all that stuff. And, you know, not nervous, but nothing. Thanks, Doug, for jinxing my ass. You're going to be, you know, thinking, your mind is going to be racing, you know, especially in one-man show. You're like, you are. But to notice the space, the lights, the exit sound, the exit sign, that dude over there, or that girl, or the silhouette, or the footlights, notice that, because that'll ground you in your space, and you'll start to relax, and you'll start to find things inside you, because you become present in the moment. And instead of what I did early on is like, I got to get to this emotion at this moment, at this time, you know. And sometimes you get there, but then when you don't get there, you're just like all flustered because you didn't get there. When if you just ground yourself in the moment, in the space, then it's like your chest opens up and you become more vulnerable, and that becomes
that's really great.
A good thing as a performer.
That's a really great note.
Yeah. I read, you know, in Pineapple Express, you talk about the promise kept. Do you kind of do that in the play?
We do. In fact, the way we came at it is we open up with me giving my testimony. That's how the play opens on a projection screen. And it's not the whole testimony. That was 5 minutes, but this is like the first 45 seconds. And I open up with asking Congress, what does a promise mean today in America? And then in the play, I build on that and I say, but there's an even bigger question, which is how far would you go to honor it? You know, and what I found was when I wrote the book and I asked those two questions, what does a promise mean to you? How far would you go to honor it? I asked that question of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I asked that question of very, very senior political officials, ambassadors. And I also asked that question of, like, you know, a 5th group team sergeant with 9 tours who is alive because a commando pulled him out of a shitstorm. Man, do you get very different answers to those two questions. You would think, but you do. I mean, like, massively different answers. And so, yes, the through line of this play is how far would you go to honor a promise? And I testify to really heal the moral injury that has occurred because these men and women honored a promise. Like, they were actually injured, you know, by honoring a promise. And then that's so fucked up. Like, to me, and not in a victimhood kind of way, but damn, you know, we asked so much of these men and women for 20 friggin' years, like less than 1% of the American population, multiple tours in most cases. And they did it. And they did it voluntarily, of all things. And then to put them in a position where they had to come back into the fray after most of them had got their lives back together, man, how fucked up. And then to turn the page on them like it was a Servpro commercial, like it never even happened, you know? And for me, man, that's rocket fuel for the next 5 years to testify in a way that, and again, I don't feel like I'm pushing. I just feel like I get to tell stories about these individuals that most people don't even know exist. And they're amazing. And their friendships are so cool. And what they did for each other is so neat and just so human, you know? And that's where I think I'm most excited, Doug, is just the opportunity to talk about a promise, not like at some highfalutin level of what it means or some meta level, but just like breakfast table, our kids are watching us, we got to do this right kind of thing. And
it's a universal question.
Yeah. Right.
It's a question.
I think so.
Everybody can take home with them, you know, and that's really smart. I used to always, you know, find different things, different techniques to kind of drive you through a performance. But, you know, one, I would always say, you know, my thing when I finished The American Soldiers, I wanted every military or veteran, people who have no connection to the military, I wanted them to either hug or shake a hand of a service member.
That's a great intention.
That was my intention, always, like, they hit that home. And so with a promise, that's something that you can easily, that can drive you through a performance, because you're trying to communicate, like, how far would you go to keep a promise? You know? And I feel, that frustration, that was, I've had, for me, with the American soldier, with the fuckery, it's the only way I can put it, the fuckery that's been going on, because I came out of the North Towers, and and my whole goal with the play and why I drove it was to really, I wanted specifically people in New York to realize, hey, that we were at war and that we should pay attention, and that we have men and women who are literally going off. And but then you see the Afghanistan withdrawal, and then you see how, especially from 20 to 2024, the fuckery that was going on. You start, as a performer, at least for me as Douglas, I was like, fuck, what am I doing? Like, am I telling the right story?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Like, should I be telling this story anymore? Like, does this story matter? Or
does anyone care?
Yeah, does anyone care? Like, you kind of feel like you're on an island floating by yourself away from the rest of the people, You're like, what's going on, And it's been, what's kept me grounded is after each performance, hearing the emotion from a vet or a military family member. But it's been tough for me, to be honest with you, because the intention that I started with now has been kind of warped in a way. And
yeah. I would tell you, man, like, as a guy, and I think I told you this when I came and saw your play, as a guy who served and sat in your play and watched the audience. And, the thing is, I think these moments that you and I are in now are the biggest tests for what we're doing. It's the biggest test for our art. It's the biggest test for our storytelling. It's like my dad used to say, anybody can lead when the sun's shining, right? I mean, and, when flags are all out and we all love being Americans. But what about when, I just had an experience the other day where, someone asked me to take my flag down during a presentation, right? Like from a corporation, no, and where I was told that my war stories were jarring for the junior associates, like, and it's like, fuck, well, you should have been there. It was even more jarring. And it's like, but
what did you tell them?
Well, I just said, look, that's my lived experience, that's my lived experience. And I draw my lessons about human connection and storytelling from those caustic areas. So, I ended up not working with them. Yeah. And that is unfortunate, but I think it's indicative of kind of where we are today. And like my team, we're getting ready to, start the marketing, and the team was like, hey, we need you to do a direct to camera on why Pineapple Express, why 11 days, why now, why should anybody care? And I got pissed. I'm like, the fuck are you talking about? Like, what do you mean why? And they're like, Scott, most people don't even know this shit happened. They don't, like, they haven't thought about it. Yeah. Like, in terms of like the withdrawal, in terms of like, I think about it every day.
Oh, shit. But anybody who doesn't know the withdrawal, the debacle of withdrawal, I don't know what rock they've been living under.
Well, but I mean, like, no one's thinking about it now. You know what I mean? Like, they're being a little flippant about it, but they're like, most people, it happened. Oh, wow, he fell off that airplane. Hey, what's on Yellowstone tonight? Yeah. Like, most people didn't clock it beyond the event itself. And, but in our world, we've been paying, there's people paying for safe houses 4 years later and doing food drops and, still working visas. I mean, there are whole groups that this is all they do. People have quit their jobs. And so for me, I want to try to honor that level of a promise kept and testify to a broader nation that this is what your veterans did when institutions failed. And what if we all kind of operated that way? What would the country look like if we all kind of showed up for our friends? And when times got hard, what if we all honored a promise like that? What would that look like? And that's really, for me, that's it. I don't have these lofty expectations beyond. I don't even expect to to get, I don't expect people to like change necessarily their point of view, but maybe just to recognize what these guys and girls actually did, that really was not told. It didn't make its way into the world, and maybe feel it a little bit, man. I'm trying not to get too jaded in these times that we live in right now, but it's tough. It's tough.
I mean, for me, I have a hard time with what's happening in New York right now. I mean, with this guy who's running for mayor, Mandami, and this whole Muslim Brotherhood, the thing that's exploding over there in New York. And I'm like, you hear Americans have short memories, but fuck, that short? Yeah. Was it that short? I mean, it was only 24 years ago that 9/11 happened, and we've gone that fast.
Yeah.
So for me, it's been really kind of surreal, from watching the buildings fall firsthand with my own eyes to 24 years later, seeing what's happening in New York. You're just like, yeah, it makes you jaded. And again, it goes back into like, what am I doing? Like,
yeah,
maybe I'm the crazy one. But like I said, I just stay focused. I spoke not too long ago with the wife of, there's a book based on him. It's called, it's Ben Weiss and his brother. They both died in Afghanistan.
Yeah. He's a ranger.
Yeah. Three Wise Men, I think the name of the book was. I spoke with his wife, Tracy, and we had a great conversation because, long story short, I found out that picture of that little boy looking of his father. I could never figure out who that family was. And whenever I use anything in my play that is actual, I want to connect to that family and get their permission, and two, let them know that I'm doing it. And so I came across the image on Twitter or X, and someone had a quote of her and said Tracy Weiss. And I said, oh shit, that's finally, 20 years later, I find out who that family. So anyway, long story short, I reached out, I tried to find her on Facebook. I couldn't find her. And I reached out I found a book written about Ben, and I reached out to the to the author, and I said, this is what I do. This is my story. I'm not a crazy person. I just really would like to let Tracy know, let his wife know that I'm using his picture, and see if she's okay, and just tell it what I've been doing. And he connected me with her, and we spoke. And we spoke this year, and we spoke for a while. And she said something to me. I kind of had the same. We spoke for about 2 hours, and it got really emotional. And she was still, obviously, she was still very emotional. I asked her a question. I said, what was Ben like? And just from a human level, my father taught me, when someone passes, you should ask their name, to keep their name alive. And so I thought that just by saying, what was Ben like? And she just broke down. And I apologized and said, I'm so sorry for asking that. I didn't think, I wasn't thinking. No. And she said, no, I'm so glad you did ask that. I really appreciate it. And please don't stop asking the hard questions, because that keeps Ben's voice alive.
Yeah.
And so I told her my doubts with the play now, and that I didn't have early on. And she said, your play matters because Ben's voice matters, and everyone else's voice matters, and you're keeping their voices alive. And what you're doing is keeping all these families, their loved ones and their members, and their loved ones, family members alive. And
yeah, I think that's absolutely true, Doug. And you are, and I've seen the play, so I can throw a big amen to that. And I think Last Out is the same way. We're struggling to keep it going. I think 11 Days will definitely have legs for a while, but we'll have the same struggles there. And I honestly believe, man, I think that at this point where we are as a nation, if we're not elbowing our way into the room as storytellers, we're not doing our job.
Yeah.
Because that's the intention right now, man, because the culture and where and it's a range of, we could unpack this for a whole podcast episode and still not come close to why this is happening, but it is happening. And if you look at storytelling through the ages, to honor war fighters and first responders and things like that, it's doing it when it's difficult that it makes the most difference. I think about our Vietnam generation, and what they went through to come home and have their stories told, and just the moral injury that they had to overcome to do it. It gives me a lot of inspiration, honestly, because those individuals inspired me a lot. Yeah. Because of what they went through,
they saw the same debacle of withdrawal to Afghanistan.
In Saigon. And they were the very ones calling me when Kabul fell, saying, "Hey dude, you're going to be all right. Like, I've been there and I got you," and I thought, man, for all the shit they've been through in their life, and they take the time to call me, or they were always the ones at the airport when we came home early on, in Bangor, Maine and other places. It was the Vietnam guys, because they did not want our generation to go through what they went through. And I just think, God almighty, where do we find these people who can do that? And like, if all we have to do is tell their story, then we get to tell their story. You know what I mean? It's not a have to thing. We get to. And for me, like, that's really all I care about anymore. I don't really care about anything else anymore. I care about my wife and my kids, and I care about America. But other than that, I really just care about telling these stories. Everything else is just a fucking distraction.
Well, I think what you said is elbowing your way in. Well, that's a life lesson for an artist, for a human being, for taking action. I mean, you really do have to elbow your way in. I mean, I tell the story of the Kennedy Center, how the whole Kennedy Center relationship started. I mean, I would just, when someone told me to connect with them and said, you should connect with them, I just kept emailing them. And I have that belief, that either you're going to say, yeah, Doug, fuck off, don't ever email me again, or, okay, dude, let's just get you on stage and shut your ass up. And that's really true. I mean, I think you're I really think you're inspiring. And I think, I know you inspire a lot of vets, but I don't know what you're on. I think there's an opportunity for you to share, because so many people come up to me and say I was on a podcast with another guy, and I said, a lot of people are terrified of going after their dreams because they're terrified of the suck. And yeah, I find always so many parallels between art and military, but a lot of people are terrified of sucking on stage, or sucking if you're playing a song, or they're just really terrified of sucking in the beginning. And you're always going to suck in the beginning. And you're such an embodiment of like not giving a fuck about sucking. And those are the ones, you're the kind of human that actually gets things done because you don't let fear overwhelm you. And I mean, I'm sure you run into people you'll run into people who are not veterans, like, I have a great story. I would love to tell a story. And you'll hear it and you'll be like, well, tell it. Like, tell it, rent a space, write it out, oh, I'm not a good writer. And people come up with 1,000 different excuses why they can't do it, right? And at some point, you're like, dude, I'm not even an actor. I'm a Green Beret. And I found my fat fingers got to a keyboard, and they typed it out, and I memorized the piece, and now I'm performing it. It's really an easy step process if you just do it. But a lot of people don't want to elbow their way towards their dreams. And I think...
No, it's true. It's true.
I think the way you do it is amazing.
Thank you, man. I attribute a lot of that to my father, because he was the same way. And then also I think I'm inspired by a lot of buddies that didn't come home. So I feel like, man, how can I not do this when they didn't get a chance to? You know what I mean? And so I'm kind of playing for more than one here. But I remember going early on when Last Out wasn't even remotely coherent. And my buddy Bo Eason, he got me connected to Larry Moss's person in New York. And, of course, Larry's obviously, big time when it comes to coaching and Broadway. And I thought, good God, like, what am I even going to do there? But I saw that they you could audit, you could audit the room, which means you basically paid a shit ton of money and you could sit there with your mouth shut and take notes. And I thought, well, that's what I'm doing then. So I went and I sat there and I watched, and I was horrified at what I was going to have to do if I did this. Like, I was like, good Lord. I mean, like, this is unbelievable. Like what these people are doing. And I thought, I don't know if I can do this. But then towards the end, one of the young actors said something kind of what you said to me just now, or what, about I don't know how to write, and the phone's not ringing. And finally Larry's like, just shut the fuck up. He's like, he goes, if you can't get a call, then do the damn thing in your living room.
Yeah.
Like, just invite some people over. If you love this thing called art, then shut the fuck up and do it somewhere else, like where you can do it. And it just like, it literally, it was like a 5.56 coming into my chest cavity. And I was like, oh my God, like that I can do, And I went home and Monty was at the hotel, and I was like, I had this big shit-eating grin on my face. And she's like, did you practice and act? I was like, no, but we can do it in our living room. And she was like, oh boy, we paid all this money for that. But for me, it changed everything. And it gave me permission to go, all right, I'm going to build this myself, and I'm going to train with the best people I can find. And then I'm just going to put it on the road. And you know what, man, the first year we did Last Out, we put 28,000 miles on a fucking U-Haul. And we drove and we performed that thing in Vermilion, South Dakota, and Brandon, Mississippi, and places in between. And sometimes to a room of like 4 people, and I'm not shitting, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. It was where I really learned the humility of this thing, and more importantly, why I was doing it. And I'm prepared to do that again, if I'm being honest. I'm prepared to do every bit of that again, and I welcome it, because that's actually the cool part.
What's your set? Like what's on your stage with you in your play?
We're still working through it now, but we've got a great design team, man. Several people out of Disney. That's the difference. The second time around is I get to like hang out with dudes like you and get really good coaching and hey, think about this, think about that. And we were able to get some grant money from the state of Florida. Nice. So we were able to bring a design team in, and I've got a really good director, and basically it looks like it's going to be a lot of projection. But the set is going to be Abbey Gate after the explosion. And it's going to, I don't know if you remember, but after the explosion, it was like a ghost town. And there was just like water bottles and My Little Pony backpacks and a little pink shoe and teddy bears and an umbrella ripped to shreds. And it looked like the apocalyptic. So it's going to be a projection screen in the center, and then Abbey Gate and a 4-foot hole in the fence projected with a VS-17 panel, which was the entryway into the Pineapple Express. And that will be, so it's a combination of projection, which we've never done before, and this static set of basically just rubble.
Nice. Yeah. I my only advice on set, just from learning this, I remember I had this idea for the Army trunk, and it's great. It's an actual World War II Army trunk that I bought, and I don't know if you've ever done this, but it's a crazy, you could spend a fuckload of money on an Army trunk. Like there's a whole other world out there, like $30,000. Like if that Army trunk landed on D-Day, it's crazy expensive. And so anyhow, I spent like $800 for mine, and I stayed up all night because I kept getting outbidded. But the reason why I tell you the story is, I remember my director goes, "Oh, you got an Army trunk?" I go, "Yeah, I finally got it." He goes, "Well, just remember, you're gonna have to carry that everywhere." I go, "Yeah, I know. Every rehearsal, you're gonna have to bring your Army trunk in." And when I was living in New York, and so I was like, I didn't think about that. Go up the stairs, down the stairs, through. I mean, and you can't store it anywhere, and you'd be stupid to leave it anywhere because stuff you get stolen, man. And so, so what, just be careful of making your Broadway set a very heavy set, because
yes, we just had this conversation.
You're gonna have to carry that somewhere else.
Yeah, we just had this conversation. The set designer had a really beautiful, I was like, oh my God, I love this. But then we had to dial it back, because it's like, no, that won't travel. And maybe one day let's hold on to that sketch, man. But for now we had to dial it way back. So it really comes down to, I think when we're done, I think this thing will travel in 4 bags, nice. 4 soft bags. And that's what we're looking at. That's kind of the standard. The other thing we're doing, at least the first half of 2026, we're only going to tour in Florida.
And where?
Florida, because we got state money. So we're like, well, you know what? let's pay it back to the state of Florida. And there's a shit ton of veterans here. Let's just keep it close. And we're gonna go hopefully to cities around Tampa, and we're booking them now. And then that'll, like you said, opportunities I hope will come from that work, and things that we wouldn't even think of will present themselves. Then we'll just follow where God takes us.
Because what happens is it'll happen from your audience who sees your play.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many bookings I would get. I saw your play. Someone saw your play. We want to bring you here. And that's exactly what's going to happen to you. Someone's going to see your play. I saw this. They're going to reach out to you. And they're like, is there any way you can come to Lubbock, Texas? Right. And you're like, sure. And then, you start figuring out what your money situation is and how you do it. But that's what's going to happen to you. And then someone's going to say, I actually know somebody at the Kennedy Center. You should reach out to this person, and then it's just, that's exactly what's going to happen to you. Your audience is going to open doors for you because they're going to be moved and they're going to see the play, and they're going to talk about the play, and share it. And that's,
well, I was fortunate enough to sit it, and I appreciate that. I sat with you on your talk back, and, the way that you engage your audience, and you even ask them for their help and continuing the mission. And I do the same thing. Like when we do the talk back, is I always ask the audience, like, hey, can you help us? Can you help us keep this moving? Can you help us, keep this going out to where it needs to go? And you're right. I mean, the audience is smart. They give great feedback. They give great perspective, and they will jump in on the mission as well. I've been amazed at how many things have happened because of the audience. It's humbling, really.
Yeah, and my Q&A started organically because when I would finish the play, I couldn't get off stage because a lot of that, especially in, I started doing it in 2015, really for real. And we're deep in war in 2015, 16, 17. Yeah. So vets and military families, they wanted to know, everybody thought that I served, and they were like, how, where did you serve? How did you serve? How'd you get this material? And so I couldn't get off stage, and producers would get pissed off, they say, hey man, we gotta strike. I mean, and we gotta close up shop. People want to go home. And so I just started organically after about, I think in 2017, I said, look, let's just factor in a Q&A afterwards as part of the play, because if you don't, you're not going to get me off stage. Basically, I'm going to be standing in uniform, and everyone's going to be in a circle around me trying to talk to me. So let's just have a Q&A for about 20, 30 minutes, get some questions out, and then we can strike down and move on.
Yeah. And that's something a lot of people, I didn't understand it. But what you just described becomes really difficult after a while if you don't have a structured talk back. Yes. Because you've given everything you have to the show, you're depleted, and you want to engage, but you're now kind of, as a storyteller, you were the helper and the audience was the beneficiary. And now you kind of need a moment to be the beneficiary and let the audience be the helper, and kind of get your shit together. And if you don't, man, like I can remember a couple of times where the talkback was not well structured and it was just this free for all, and it was friggin' awful.
Yeah,
I just wanted to scream out it was not pleasant for me.
Yeah, and there'll always be an asshole who will be like, he'll take it politically. I remember I did a play. Whenever someone gets political with me, I bounce. I say, I don't like. I literally say this, like, I don't really like talking about politics. At the end of the play is not for or against war. It's really about the people who serve in war. What you think about the play, and then I kind of move on. And sometimes someone says, they'll ask me like, who are you going to vote for president? Like, I'm not going to talk about that on stage. And as it's a personal matter, and I always try to veer. And then someone will say, well, they'll try to corner you. I know you've done talkbacks already, so this might be redundant, but they'll try to, well, you said in your piece, the way you did the piece, it sounded like you're against Afghanistan or against the withdrawal, or you're for the withdrawal, and they'll try to corner you and tackle you. You just have to really not get engaged with that, because they're already set. They're already set in their point of view. And you talk about in your other book, no one's going to come to save you, how to survive a shovel fight.
Yeah.
I'm not very good with surviving shovel fights, man. I'm not. On stage, I am, but in normal life, I'm horrible at it. My father was Arabic, and I'm just not good at staying calm. And I know you hear so many special op guys and Navy SEALs and Green Beret, like you stay calm under a fight, man. But there's times, man, when you just fucking your fuse just pops, and it goes. And I've gotten better, of course, over the years, but yeah, you just have to let people kind of lead the conversation, and they'll probably ask you about your service, and so that it'll be an opportunity for you to kind of talk about, why the play is important to you. But yeah,
Exactly.
some people will try to corner you into politics, and so
It never fails, especially today because it's gotten worse, right? I mean, it's now it's like it's a killing field of, as Sebastian Younger says, people treating their neighbor with the contempt normally reserved for one's enemies, and it's a terrible thing. And honestly, I have, I actually have a lot to say about the behavior around the issues, not so much about the issues. I don't really have anything to say about the issues because you can't swing a dead cat without hitting a million forums where those issues can be discussed. And that's fine. Like, I'm not interested. What this, like you said, this is something different. Like this is storytelling, and this is shared perspective, right? This is about shared perspective, not in group out group behavior.
yeah.
And so if I even get a whiff of that, and I feel like it's not going to go away, I'm out. I'm not going to spend my energy on that. I'm sure as hell not going to get sucked into a shovel fight. Like you though, I think we all do. We all have those moments where we don't avoid it, or maybe not avoid it, but we get sucked into it. And I think that's getting tougher today too. So it will be interesting because here's the thing about like 11 days, there was a very emotional thing for the veterans that, well, I think a lot of Americans, but certainly the veterans that fought there feel betrayed, right? So when you have betrayal as an emotion, that's going to come out in the talk back. You're going to have people venting and getting stuff off their chest, and they may utter or proclaim political reasons for it. You know what I mean? Like, but they're trying to get past their own pain.
Yeah.
So what I try to do is steer it back to, all right, well, let's just focus on the event. Like, let's don't focus on the political reasons for it, because I'm not qualified to talk about that. And that's not what this is. And if I can steer it off that, then I'm good. But if it just keeps going back to it, then I have no interest in it, because it's not going to end well.
Yeah. And keep it short too. I mean, no, it's never going to end well. And then when people come at you like that, they have a point of view, and they're not deviating from it,
Nope.
I wanted to ask, because I'm really, and I mean this sincerely, man, I'm really inspired how much content you're putting out with your books and your play. And
Thanks.
how do you solve problems, Scott? And not as a soldier or veteran or a Green Beret, but how do you go, what have you learned as a Green Beret that when you're like trying to solve a problem as an actor,
Yeah.
how do you do it? Because I'm really fascinated by how you're going about that.
Oh, thanks.
How do you not get overwhelmed?
Yeah. I suppose my process is I story tell out loud. It would be the best way I know to describe it, is that,
To yourself?
and to the world. I don't try to get the story formed or feel like I have even resolution in some cases before I put the story into the world. And I look at it as, when I teach I teach storytelling on the for-profit side, and I teach human connection as a skill set, right? Because that's what Green Berets, I think, are best at, is our ability to build social capital, our ability to build rapport, relationships, trust where there is none. And we use both art and science to that. And I've spent a lot of years of my life around neuroscientists.
Is that a Green Beret thing, or is that a Scott thing?
That started, it's very much a Green Beret thing, because if you look at the charter, and maybe I should have led with this, but if you look at the charter of a Green Beret or special forces in the inventory of special operations, right, of all the Rangers, the SEALs, Every one of those outfits has a very unique and distinct mission set, right? Most of them are surgical strike of some kind. Rangers, Delta, SEAL teams, Marine special ops, they specialize in a certain kind of surgical strike. Whereas special forces honestly draw their origins from World War II with the Jedburgh teams of lawyers and teachers who jumped into occupied Europe in 3-person teams and basically mobilized partisans behind enemy lines to conduct subversion and sabotage against the Nazis. They did the same thing in Indochina against the Japanese. And that became the predecessor to not just special forces, but the CIA. It was called the Office of Strategic Services. And they split in 1952, I believe. And the operational arm became the Green Berets, and the intelligence arm became the CIA. But their origins were unconventional warfare, working by, with, and through indigenous people to help them stand up on their own. In with 12, out with 1,200, right? And so that's what we've been doing for decades and decades and decades. We actually assess and train our candidates to be really good at building rapport and really good at social capital, because you've got to work with, a rural farmer that doesn't know how to read, and you've got to mobilize that cat into a fighter. And it's got to be based on trust, and nothing else. So, yeah. And so when I got out of the military, I thought, man, I don't want to do more of the don't you want to be tough like me stuff. Like, and God bless the veterans that do that shit, but the whole vet bro network is not my thing. I was like, I want to focus on what corporate America calls the soft skills, which I hate that term, but they're actually the interpersonal skills that allow us to get big shit done. And so in 2013, man, that's what I started focusing on, like the rapport building, active listening, storytelling, nonverbal physicality. How do you create reciprocity in a relationship where there's no trust? How do you restore trust? And I started building, I'd already started that in SF. I taught that at our schoolhouse. But I built the community of practice even bigger. And so really started getting an acumen for that body of work. And when I problem solve, that's how I try to think about it. Is I think that, most of the problems we face today are wicked problems. Like you've cited it. Just look at the theater industry. That is a wicked, ill-structured problem, man. Like that industry that was once this thing, it is now becoming this thing. And it is a wicked, ill-structured, ill-formed problem that no one person or one group can solve. It is a wicked problem. So how do you tackle that? Well, you start to get other like-minded constituents from other things, and you start to go, okay, how might we put a play together about the war that could travel around the country and perform on its own terms, right? And so you start to build this community of practice of these eclectic dudes and dudettes, and you problem solve in real time. But it's the social capital that you build as you go, and you're talking about it as you go, and it's an ongoing conversation in real time, and it's clunky and it's ugly, but you don't worry about it, because the reality is you're never going to frame or tame that problem unless you do that. And I learned that as a Green Beret. Like I learned that I can't get shit done without State Department. I can't get shit done without the infantry. I can't get shit done without the host nation partner force, period. If I try to do this by myself, we're just 12 dudes with guns and we're going to get rolled up. Right. But if I can build rapport and I can walk the halls of the Colombian embassy like I'm stationed there, and like, everybody, I walk into their office and there's a 7th group certificate on their wall. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But then I've got pre-existing social capital that I can leverage. And so I know that's a long answer, but I try to problem solve in real time through relationships that are built around the wicked problems.
Well, what do you do? I mean, do you write notes like I need to do this first, then this? I mean, like you like a list guy where I scratch this off, then this, then this, then this, to stay organized, to eat the elephant one bite at a time. You know what I mean?
So that part, I drive my team crazy, because out of 10, I'm a 9 quick start, and I'm like a 9 quick start. I'm like a 3 fact find on the Colby scale. I'm a 3 follow through and a 3 implement. So like I'm ready, fire, aim, pretty much. And I learned that as a Green Beret, like I admit that. So my ability to like if I have a vision of something like the play, if I'm left to my own devices, I'll fuck it up because I'll come up with this idea and I'll run at 90 miles an hour on it, and none of my team can keep up with me. They're like, where'd he just go? Like, is he off in the woods again? You know? And so I will iterate on a problem so fast and I'll leave everybody behind. So what I've learned to do, and I'm getting better, is I try to really surround myself with teammates who are much more prone for structure and process, and they can take the ideas with the basket, and they're just as obsessive about structure and process as I am about the idea itself or the creative aspect of it. And that's a work in progress for me. You know, that's a work in progress for me. But like with 11 days, I've surrounded myself with teammates that are friggin' amazing at structure and process and budgets. And it pissed me off because I feel like a lot of times I want to go a lot faster than what they are going. But if I do, I'm going to screw it up. And I know I will. I'm notorious for it. So that's the other side of it is for me, if I'm cranking out content, and now here's what I will not negotiate. When it comes to me, like putting out stories and content, do not muzzle me like at all. Give me a podcast, give me a whiteboard, give me my LinkedIn Live and like these kind of forums.
Let me go.
And let me go, and do not try to constrain me, or you will absolutely, our business and everything we're doing will fail. You got to let me run and tell stories. And then you guys, as I'm throwing this shit up in the air, like you run with the baskets and catch them. But you got to let me do that. And that's kind of what we've done. And I'm telling you, man, it's made a big difference. I've been able to crank quality content on a scale I've never done before. And I think that's why.
Yeah. I mean, well, you're really active on LinkedIn. I love watching your shit on LinkedIn. I mean, you're just,
thanks.
I would have never thought LinkedIn seems to fit you very organically. And I would have never thought it would fit you organically.
I wouldn't either.
Because it's such a corporate platform, you know what I mean? And
you know why though? You know why I think it is, Doug? No. Is because Pineapple with the withdrawal. Because when the withdrawal happened, a lot of veterans were in that space and working, and that's where they first found each other. And then we went to Signal. So we would do initial locations on LinkedIn, and then we would say, go to Signal. And so what happened was this whole network of volunteers found each other and then went back to LinkedIn with these pre-existing relationships from the withdrawal. And now there's just a whole different relationship. It's weird. I never was active on LinkedIn before that much. But now it's just because like a lot of us went through Pineapple together, and then the fires in Maui and the hurricane in Western North Carolina. And now I just feel comfortable. I feel like people on LinkedIn, for the most part, at least the ones they're really cool. And I really like, even the ones I don't know.
There's way more veterans than I would have ever thought on LinkedIn. I mean, I connect with so many vets on LinkedIn that maybe because there's less noise on LinkedIn, so it's
maybe. I think so. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think that's right.
Why did you write Pineapple in the third person?
You're the first person that's asked me that. I'll tell you why. Because
I kept checking, like, did Scott write this? I kept checking to see if Scott wrote it.
Yeah. So I felt like I did not want to write Pineapple. I did not want to write it. It was my father that talked me into writing it because I felt like, okay, first of all, this thing was a shit show. It's still going on. Yes, we got some people out, but a lot more people didn't get out. There was a lot of other veteran groups that did way more than we did, and still are. And I don't want to write some fucking memoir about how I came out of retirement and worked my phone to save Afghan friends. Like, that seems to me to be not me. It just doesn't feel right. And so my dad was like, no, Scotty, you got to tell the story. Because if you don't, somebody else is going to tell it. And you can tell it like from this, why don't you just tell it in the third person? Be the storyteller, like tell it. Yeah, just step back because that's pretty much what I was in the whole event. Like, yes, there were times, I mean, I started the chat room and there were times when I led, but there were also a lot of times when I was way over my head and way outgunned. And I would say, guys, I got nothing. Like, Zach, you got it, buddy. And he was way younger, way smarter, way more savvy.
I'm sure everyone was overwhelmed, man.
Oh, yeah. But as soon as he said that, I thought, okay, well, so then Simon and Schuster was, they're like, well, no, we need a memoir. And I was like, well, then I'm not going to do it. If I can write it in the third person, then I'll do it. And at the time, James Meek was co-authoring with me as well before he got in trouble. And I had to talk him into it too. He didn't want to do it. But once he was gone from the project and it was just me, and Simon and Schuster reluctantly agreed, we turned in our first draft and our editor was like, oh yeah, like this works. I don't know why this works, but it works. And I was so happy, and afterwards, the feedback I've gotten from a lot of fellow veterans who volunteered was like, yeah, man, thanks for telling our story.
Yeah.
And that's what I felt like was the most rewarding. Was I felt like I was just a storyteller. I mean, yes, I was there. Yes, I'm a character, but a lot of my story is fucking up. I made a lot of mistakes on Pineapple. But to be able to tell the story holistically was really cool. I think it built me a lot of social capital with people that I value very highly. And now in the play, I am the protagonist. That's, it's not a third person thing. I'm the protagonist who's testifying and about overcoming moral injury. I play different characters, but you'll see my point of view is different from the book, but it feels right in an oral storytelling environment.
Yeah. I feel like you're telling the story you wanted to tell at Capitol Hill.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly right. I didn't get the chance to testify and tell what really happened and why it mattered, but I'm going to do that now. And I'm okay with that. I don't feel uneasy about that. Or in fact, I feel like in some ways it's the next level that people who don't feel heard or seen expect from me.
Yeah, that's a great way to say it. I mean, that's kind of what my attraction to the American soldier is I'm still connected to that moment in time from 9/11, and I still want to tell those stories. So it's helping people, and a lot of guys reach out to me and they're just thankful that I'm helping them being heard, telling their stories who have not had a chance to tell their stories.
Yeah, man. Yeah, you do.
Do you do your writing? How do you do your writing? I mean, do you just write when you feel like it, or do you say, I'm writing today for 5 hours, I'm writing today 3 times this week? How do you do your writing?
I'm pretty disciplined about my writing. I when I'm writing, if I say, okay, like I am working on a book right now about storytelling called The Generosity of Scars, and we're closing in on that. And so I'm really, really disciplined about when I write, and I'm very Pressfieldian. Stephen Pressfield to me is like my hero on how to approach writing. He is his. You don't. Oh, check him out. His book is called. Well, he's got a ton of them. The War of Art.
Okay. Oh, he wrote that. I know that book, but I haven't read that book.
He did, and he's a former Marine. He wrote Gates of Fire about the Spartans.
I didn't know he was a former. Yeah, I know the War of Art, but I didn't know he was a Marine.
Yeah, and his approach to just creativity is to me is kind of my guide, and he has a very regimented approach to writing and creating and development that I follow. And so I sit down and I do my work. That's where I'm thankful that I have my special forces background, because I feel like that is something I've been able to parlay into my creativity, is the battle rhythm of my life. Like I can create these blocks of time where I'm super, super intentional and focused. And it really keeps me healthy, because it keeps my mind working and moving and doing creative things. And I feel very connected to the earth and to my family when I'm done, and relevant.
Writing is the most therapeutic thing you could do. It's I know exactly what you're feeling. When I write my newsletter, I mean, I put a lot of time into my newsletters. I try to think of the story I'm going to tell, how I'm going to tell it. But I wrote, I'm starting to write a book, the American Soldier book, and I'm trying to tell the story of how it became a play, my journey meeting veterans throughout the journey. But yeah, there's something about writing that people who don't write, besides clarifying your thought, that's one of the best things it does. It clarifies your thought, but two, there is something. It's like doing yoga for the soul, man. It's
that's a good metaphor. And right. And you know what, Doug? It's so accessible. The thing is, I think it's kind of like what you were talking about with doing a play or storytelling. We've mystified it because of the industry.
Yeah.
Where people, they look at it and they go, yeah, I could never write a book. And I'm like, well, why? But why? Why can't you just tell your story? Forget about the book. I don't really have a story, or I wouldn't know where to start. And it's just like all these reasons, like you said, but a lot of it is because I don't know how to get published, or who said anything about getting published? Let's just start with the story.
They're already thinking about the finish line. They haven't even started the race yet.
The industry will fuck up art in a heartbeat, man. I mean, it doesn't matter what the creative endeavor is. If you're not careful, the industry and what our perception of that associated industry will creep in the form of self-sabotage, and it will talk you out of it, or it will dilute it to the point that it's not even real or you. And that's my biggest thing that I rage against today is I don't want to say I'm anti-institutional or anti-industry, but I'm very, very skeptical of them and their role that they play on just the general creativity of humans as we're navigating the world. We actually pull ourselves out of the fight because we think whatever this industry thing is that I'm not capable. It's no, dude, that's crazy. Yeah. I mean, you're write your story, and then you'll be surprised at what will happen and what will present itself to you. And my buddy Zach, who is he was the shepherd or the engineer on Pineapple Express, an amazing human. He was a Green Beret, then he got out because he didn't like where it was going, and he became a middle school teacher at Syracuse, and then really was the architect of the Pineapple Express, and just a good human, man, raising little boys. But he wrote his version of Pineapple Express, which is coming out now, but it's from his lens, and he started writing it because he wanted his sons to know what happened, and it's evolved into a really beautiful piece of work, and I would not be surprised if it gets published. But the reason he started it, he never lost sight of that, was for his kids. That, if that happened, that was success. And isn't that why we tell stories?
Yeah, I think so. And I go back to this thing I said earlier in the podcast, and I'll share a story. Is I really believe this, and because I felt it from the very beginning as a young actor, that I believe if you create content, and I always say the acting gods, but the old adage in New York and the acting world is work begets work. And when I was starting out as an actor, I would do fucking plays in middle of Long Island. I mean, I'd go everywhere, but it always gave me more work. And I learned right off the bat. And I worked with a very famous actress. Her name was Marion Seldes. She's in the Theater Hall of Fame, and I did a play with her. And just a gorgeous woman. She's long passed, but just an amazing human being. And she was Edward Albee's favorite actress, and she was just this very well-spoken. And I remember doing a play with her, and I was really young. It was like 2000. I was just in New York, just pre 9/11 even. And I said, Miss Seldes, how do you, what's your advice to make it in this business? And she said, and she spoke, do theater, my love. Do as much theater as you can. The more theater you do, the more theater you will do. And I was like, huh? She goes, work begets work. And she was the one who said, the acting gods will reward you, my love. And she wasn't British, but she spoke in this very elegant.
Yeah.
And it's true. And I remember when and this is what gave me the confidence to do The American Soldier. I wasn't getting cast, and I found a friend in an acting class. I said, hey, do you want to memorize 20 monologues? Let's just memorize 20 monologues. And every week we'll go in and we'll show each other a new monologue. And so we'll develop characters and we'll develop new monologues. Yeah. And so we did that. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of work came from that effort to that work. One, because we had when someone would ask us, hey, do you have another monologue? Boom. Oh, I'm going to cast you. And then we had all these different characters we would develop. And that's what gave me the confidence to do The American Soldier, because I was like, fuck, I just memorized 20 monologues. I probably can learn this play. And so it does really go, if you, the acting gods do reward you when you put content out and you work begets work.
Yes.
Compared to, like you said, waiting around for the phone to ring.
Yeah, I mean, just sitting on the side of a mountain admiring your navel, waiting for inspiration. Like, it's not going to, it doesn't work. Like, that's not how movement and meaning are inextricably linked. That's what psychiatrist Dr. Ivan Taurel says. And I think that's true. When we move is when we make meaning, and we have a mandate to make meaning. I'll give you two examples on the writing side. When COVID hit, we lost everything. All my speaking gigs were gone. We were in trouble. Yeah. And I just kind of did what my dad taught me on that one, is like, when everything falls apart, focus on the person next to you and try to help out, And so I did a video series called Leading Through Chaos. And it was what I had learned as a Green Beret, and I just filmed it, and we just put it out on my website for free. And it really did well. Like, people, because it was things that people were experiencing that I had learned, like when if you were in the operations center and a helicopter went down and things were just falling apart, like, here's what your regimen, here's what you do. And here's how you over communicate to one another. And it really did well. Like, a lot of people downloaded this thing. And then I just said, you know what, let's make it a book. And so it's terrible. It's terribly edited, but we just turned it into an Amazon book. And man, people are still reading that damn thing and will bring it up to me. And they're like, hey, I'm using this for my senior leadership team. And I'm like, you've got to be shitting me, dude. Like, you got to find a better business book than that. And they're like, no, because it was written when it was really shitty.
Yeah.
And then the other one, which just recently I did, was around the terrorism thing, where leaving Afghanistan, we left all kinds of terror groups in our wake that are reemerging in Afghanistan. And a lot of our veterans have stayed on the phone with former allies and agency and intelligence folks that we abandoned. And they're still in place. They still are getting tons of information. And you may have heard me talk about this on LinkedIn and with Sean Ryan and others about what I call the gathering storm. Sarah Adams is doing the same, and Legend. And I feel really strongly that there is another attack coming. I like you, I think 9/11 should be much closer in our rearview mirror than what it is. And we are very pre 9/11 right now, if not worse. But also, I noticed that the more I talked about it, the more my moral injury was reigniting, and the more angry I was getting, and I was losing my focus on my for-profit restoration and healing. And so I thought, you know what? I'm just going to write a book. And so I worked with a couple of other authors, and we wrote The Gathering Storm, and we didn't even put our names to it, man. Like, my name's in it in the forward, but that's it. Like, no one put their names on it because of, retribution or whatever. And we just put it up on Amazon, created, and a lot of people have read it. And if it helps one person in the community get ready for something that might hit them, great. And I guess my larger point there, Doug, is just to what you said. If you see a need, tell the story, write the story to fill the need, and everything else will sort itself out. It's the act of creating that I think gives us our purpose in life.
Yeah. And I always tell people it's not your job to judge the work. It's your job to do the work.
So good. So good, man. Yeah, that's so good. You're not entitled to the fruits of your labor. You're entitled to your labor.
Yeah, because if you start, there's going to be so many people who are going to judge your work, and so many more people are going to judge your work. You don't need to judge it. And if you start focusing on the judging, you'll get shit done. Your job is to do the work. It's to do the work.
Self-editing is the enemy of anything creative. It's the worst. And I think once we can give ourselves permission, and I don't know, for whatever reason, I have arrived at the age of 57 in a place where I feel totally permissive to just create in real time, fuck a bunch of stuff up, make mistakes. Some of it's not good. A lot of it's not good. Some of it's pretty good. some of it serves people, and that's really what I'm after. I just try to, that old adage, I think it was Bo Eason that said it maybe, but stories are told in the service of others. They're not about you. It has nothing to do with you. Even if you're the protagonist, it doesn't have a damn thing to do with you. The reason I think your play is so compelling is, yes, we understand very early on your connection to 9/11 and the towers, and your desire to do something, which gives us a sense of you. But then you become a completely generous vehicle for all of these other personalities from history that we can now get to know. It's not even about Doug. We don't forget why you're doing it, but we're so grateful for the generosity that you let us meet these other people. And I mean, like, what if we all did some version of that just a couple times a day? Damn, man, that's the world I want to live in.
It'd be a much better place.
Yeah.
It'd be
and I think it's why you got to keep elbowing your way into the room, even when, because people are so hungry. They don't get that kind of generosity anymore. They just don't. It's just almost non-existent. And to be able to sit and like autobiographically process one's life in these amazing stories that you tell and transform, right? Like, where else can you do that?
Yeah. It's kind of scary hearing you and Sarah talk about that, though.
I know.
I mean,
I hate it.
I mean, you don't have to answer this, but do you walk around with a gun everywhere?
Pretty much.
I mean, I have a gun, but I don't have one in my car. Mainly, so I heard someone say, especially, everyone talks about, Second Amendment, and I'm a big Second Amendment guy, but you're like shooting another human being and talking about shooting someone else. I guess maybe if your life depended on it, you would have no problem. I guess your instincts would kick in. But man,
I think there's a lot of bravado around gun ownership, and I'm a supporter of it. Yeah. But I think, with great power comes great responsibility, right? And I think a lot of people who do own firearms and, run their mouths about it and shit, like, I think that they're probably not the person I'd want to be around if bullets were flying. But
I guess my question is, like, when like I have, everyone carries one in their car. I have one in my house, but like, when are you going to know when to pull it out? Scott knows. I know Scott will know, but people like Doug, when are we going to know to pull it out and use it?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
So, yeah, it's a fair question. So one of the things that I talk about in The Gathering Storm, and Sarah and Boone also talk about, and I hope people will pick that book up. It's on Amazon, and all proceeds go back into Task Force Pineapple. But here's the basic premise of it, and then I'll get to the gun question. And my humble answer, it's probably not sufficient, but I believe that what we're looking at, I did in the book, The Gathering Storm, there's Sarah's intel piece along with the other analysts that she works with in the front. But then I follow it with, I think it's 8 or 9 case studies. And I looked at terror attacks since 9/11 and what can we learn from them? And I looked at Mumbai. I looked at the Beslan school siege in Russia, and, even the DC snipers. And what is becoming an overwhelmingly compelling and concerning trend is not the spectacular 9/11 style attacks, but rather the October 7 localized complex attacks where we live, work, and play. My friend Dave, who works at the agency and has since the 70s, terrorism versus horrorism, right? Acts of violence so horrific that they send you into into institutional paralysis. Like, you can't even respond to it. And if you look at like October 7 and how it went down, that is exactly, and that wasn't happenstance. That effect was achieved by design. So much so that they ran at the police stations and substations with direct assaults. As part of their work, they wore first responder uniforms and executed parents in front of their children so that the children would always fear IDF and first responders inside Israel. Like, levels of interpersonal violence that we can't even fathom are becoming the trend. in terrorism. And so what I say to people is, look, if you are not looking at scenario-based reality, you're a fucking fool. Because if you're waiting on like the government or the Department of Homeland Security or the 24/7 news cycle to tell you there's a threat, you're deluded. Like, I don't know what to tell you. There are literally scenario after scenario that we can just look at and just, you don't even have to be an analyst. Just pull it apart and go, okay, what were the trends here? What were the things, what's happening on a scale of close interpersonal violence with terrorism that I should be clocking? And then how do I train for that? You know, like, where do they mostly occur? Well, they happen in public places, at cafes and schools, and no gun zones. All right. Then what are the gun laws around where I live, and how should I be thinking about that? What does my community think about this? Do we know who the veterans are in my community? Do we have a plan for triage? Have we talked with first responders and law enforcement about what would happen if our local police and first responders were impersonated in a multi-scale attack at multiple nodes? You know, like, there's so many. And so what I tried to do in the book is I tried to ask really hard questions that illuminate possible scenarios. And then who do I know around me that could help me train through those? And right. So
have you done that in your home?
Yes. We've done like scenario-based functional training in my home. My buddy, Lenny Bruce, and others who are fantastic at that type of, force protection analysis have come in and helped me talk through it. And then we go to the range and we go through different things. And my wife has trained on those things. My sons have trained on those things. They're all gone now, but I probably need to get back and do it more. I would say probably one of the most important things is to understand the different scenarios that you might face, and then get someone who's really well-versed in those type of complex scenarios and train with them. And then talk to them about indicators, and talk to them about different triggers in which you would pull your weapon, and talk through them and work through them. And that's the only way to really do it, is just to work through them in real time and then talk about it. And after action review.
It's hard because I did that after 9/11. Me and my wife now, but girlfriend then, New York was so fucking upside down. And you couldn't even use a cell phone. Cell phones were, because back then they were all on, satellite, and everything was blocked up. But so we developed we said, if something like that happens again, where are we going to meet at? And it was hard, man. It was just,
it is hard.
We had a blackout, and very soon afterwards, everybody freaked the fuck out. We were like, oh shit, here it goes again. But it was just a natural blackout. It was like a natural blackout that happened in the whole white city. The last blackout happened like in sometime in the 70s. It was just a weird thing. And
look at,
me and my girlfriend, we went like this. We went the complete opposite direction, and we had a plan. And she fucked up the plan, or I fucked up the plan, and I ended up going to the meeting spot, and she went to a different meeting spot. And it's hard. These things, the execution of these plans is much more challenging than people realize.
Oh, good God. And we have such a comms architecture that we've gotten used to. Department of Energy has done studies on what would happen if an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse, was, detonated over the United States. And there's studies that show 85, 90% of the population will be dead in a year. Our ability to even food source, water source, forget it. And think about what it would do to our there's a book called One Second After, or something about an EMP. It's terrifying.
That shit's terrifying. That shit's terrifying.
It is. But there's a range of
freak out.
Well, look at what happened in Western North Carolina, dude. You had Hurricane Helene, which came right up this bay to my left, went up into where all my family's from in Western North Carolina, Inca, Candler, Canton, Swannanoa, and it was apocalyptic. It was biblical in scale. I went up there and toured it with Pastor Glenda from one of my family members' congregation, and there were entire mountainsides just gone. One dude went to get his parents out of their home, and he watched their home just get engulfed with a mudslide. It was god awful. And the Pastor Glenda told me in tears, she said, we were 14 days without food, water, or medicine. And she said, if it had not been for the veterans that somehow cut their way to us, we wouldn't have survived. And she said we didn't see anybody. There were local volunteer firefighters trying. There was nobody from state, federal government in 14 days that got to them. It was veterans that got to them. And guess what? Most of those groups had formed during the Afghanistan withdrawal, and they used signal to reorient inside the mountains of Western North Carolina. Same with the Maui fires. My point is, pick your catastrophe, pick your crisis. Those things are coming. Like, it's just the world we live in. We're going to experience meltdowns and chaotic situations. And I do believe we will experience in our lifetime, sooner than later,
I hope you're wrong.
an attack that looks much more like October 7th than 9/11. It's coming.
But what's fucked up about that is if that happens, Scott, because something like that, this country will start waving their the saddle. What's the term?
I know what you mean.
Saddle rattling, saber
Rattle
rattling.
the sabers.
Yeah, saber rattling.
Yeah.
We'll start saber rattling, and we'll be right back in war. I mean, there's no question in my mind that if something like October 7th happened, this country will all of a sudden be like, and I don't think that's the right decision. I'm not saying that's the right decision. I'm saying is that we'll be right back in the same fucking bullshit that we're in with Iraq, and
for a 20-year war.
Yeah, and then my son is all of a sudden fighting in bumfuck E in the asshole of the world. That's my biggest.
So I did a coda for Last Out. It came to me in a dream, and we only did it one time, and it was in Tampa at the last show I performed in Tampa, and this was in 23, shortly after we had finished touring with Sinise. And this coda came to me, and my son Cooper at the time was playing, I was playing Danny Patton, the Green Beret, who perishes at the end of the play. He ascends to Valhalla. And my son Cooper was playing my son Caden. And, a lot of the play is about Danny coming to terms with his son joining the Army as we abandon our Afghan allies with a program that was called Village Stability. I wrote this before the withdrawal even happened, but we abandoned our tribal allies in 2013. And that's why I got out of the Army. That's what the play is set in that context. Anyway, so I wrote this coda, and in the coda so at the very end, we're doing the talk back. The cast is out there, and we have a question planted in the audience, and it says, this person stands up and says, based on the way the withdrawal happened, what's the worst case scenario that keeps you up at night? And all of a sudden, the actors stood up, the lights went dark, and we walked off stage, and then you hear this soundtrack playing. And first of all, it's wedding bells, and it's Danny's son, Caden, getting married, saying, I do. And then you hear a baby cry, and it's like, oh, Caden, she's got your eyes. And then, gentlemen, you may now don your green berets. And then it goes to this just in, there's been a terror attack in Tampa, Florida, thousands of casualties. We have word that special operations forces from MacDill are en route to Afghanistan, the suspected source of the Al-Qaeda training camps. And then the lights come up, and it's just a white hot on Cooper, completely kitted up like Danny. And he's rolling up his parachute. And we brought in an Afghan actor named Fahim Fazli, who is in the Superman movie, who was an interpreter in Afghanistan. He left acting, and he comes dressed to the nines in tattered commando rags, tricked out M4, night vision goggles, and literally has the drop on Caden. And Caden jumps up, and so like they're staring at each other. And we learn through dialogue that Fahim was abandoned by the Americans. He's about to put a bullet in Caden's chest, and he asks his name, and Caden says Patton. And he goes, are you Danny Patton's son? And he says, yes. And he goes, that's the only reason that you're alive today. Be careful. The next Afghan you meet will not be as kind as me. And he disappears back into the black.
Wow.
And then Caden takes the silly band, and he holds it up, and he says, thanks, Dad. And the lights go black. But in my mind, that is exactly what's going to fucking happen. Like this, you nailed it. The attack's going to come. We're so short-sighted. Our politicians are mouth breathers who have no depth on these fights, and they're going to load all our kids up on C-17s, and they're going to put them right back into that fight doing the same shit we did for 20 years with no local context. And the only thing that might make a difference is the relationships that our veterans built and showed during that withdrawal, but I don't know if that'll be enough.
I mean, I have this image in the play when I'm performing. I try to find images to take me to the places that are hard to go for, and the image that always gets me there, I have an image of my son Austin in a Huey helicopter, suited up in combat, sitting on the side of a helicopter, like going somewhere. And every time I think of it, I break down. And I sometimes you get in so many different worlds, and I wonder if sometimes when you're performing like Last Out, but I sometimes wonder, like, fuck, I really hope my life doesn't represent my art or copy my art, and my art, like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want my life like, am I projecting my future in a weird way? You know what I'm talking about?
I do. I worry about it all the time. Like, my kid's an infantryman. My oldest son's an infantryman. My middle son's federal law enforcement. Like, I worry about that.
Hesitated, like they said, I want to join, and I'm going in,
without even blinking.
Were you cool with that? Were you like,
no,
no? About being a doctor?
I don't know what I wanted. I struggled with Cody going in the Army. It was a big inspiration for writing Last Out, because I needed to figure it out. I needed to figure out what was going on with me, and the play helped me do that. If you read the dialogue, especially at the end between Danny and Caden, that play's not autobiographical, but by God, it is right there. It is where I made discoveries, and I've said these words to my son: is, you're going to do things that could haunt your dreams, man. But it's not about revenge; it's about the people you love and protecting the people you love. And if you ever forget that, get the fuck out.
Is he married?
He is. Well, he's engaged.
Yeah, engaged. He's tough as thing. I mean,
yeah.
Are you a fan of this new Secretary of War?
Well, I'm friends with him. First of all,
well, I mean, I know him too, and I've known him too. Sorry, that came out the wrong way. I've known him, and we used to email each other when he was at Fox. But I asked that regarding trust. Like, if something happened.
Yes, I trust him. Yeah, I trust him.
Or is it out of his hands even? Like, he's just really, the powers to be are just like, you're just a pawn here, brother.
How much power do you put in our policymakers today and our politicians? Like, how much stock do you really put in them? I mean, like, there's things that Pete does that I don't agree with, and he knows that. But our friendship, will always be there, the same way it is with Mike Waltz and a few of the other guys that I knew way before they were politicians. And I'm not going to change that again, but I'm also not, I'm not a Pete Hegseth groupie either, just because we're friends or whatever. Like, there's things I patently disagree with, and we've had those conversations. However, do I have confidence in Pete as the Secretary of War? Yes, I do. And I honestly, me, Doug, I'm a really apolitical dude. Like, even when I go on Fox or CNN and I talk politics, I try to really talk the issue and not, I've been just as hard on the Trump administration with the Doha agreement, and they're still kowtowing to the Taliban, in my opinion. In fact, I think they're doing more fucked up shit in ways of dealing with the Taliban that's just diluted. Not a fan of what Sebastian Gorka's doing. So I don't feel like it's just my opinion. It's just my perspective. But as far as Pete and his character and his ability to lead the War Department, I have a lot of confidence in him. And I think his focus is where it needs to be. Is he pissing a lot of people off? Yes. Is there grandstanding? I don't know. I think that's a leadership style maybe, but I think he's a competent leader. And I think he's.
That's my question to you. That's my question. Yeah. Not that I mean, you just want, like, I think of World War II, like, if my son Austin is being called up to serve, drafted into combat, that the people who are in front of them are making the best decisions, and they're not making political decisions, Like, you think about the fucking fuckery of Iraq, that's got to be really hard for a lot of families to digest. And then, and Afghanistan as well. I mean, we've been talking about Afghanistan and all your plays about Afghanistan, but I was for Iraq in the beginning, and I've changed my mind really hard on that war, especially and the people who've changed my mind is soldiers, vets,
Veterans. Yeah,
veterans.
I get that. I think that there's a lot of, putting up on pedestals during the global war on terror. We made a lot of mistakes as special forces guys. I made a ton of mistakes. And I think sometimes we got a pass when we shouldn't have. Like it was not, we did not handle things the way we should have. But at the end of the day, in my mind, it was not those teams and those platoons and those units that went out there and did the deal, who did a lot more than me. They're not where you lay fault. It's policymakers and politicians who start wars and who prosecute them poorly. And I do believe that the prosecution of the global war on terror overall was a complete strategic shit show, in many ways. Did we prevent attacks? Yes, I do. I believe that happened. And I think in many ways we did what we went out there to do. But we also, in the course of that, developed a lot of hubris and maybe went about it in a certain way that we've created the conditions we're in right now. And a lot of it was because I think we overinvested in these generals and admirals and diplomats and politicians to such a degree that we didn't hold them to account.
Yeah, and it's also true what Pete says. None of these guys get fired, which is insane. And then I forgot what the stat was, but I read how many generals we had in World War II compared to how many generals we have right now.
It's insane.
It's insane. It's like it's become a corporate. So listen, I know you're tired. You've been fucking working, rehearsing, so I don't want to keep you on this podcast for too long.
We're good.
I really appreciate you coming on.
No, it's my honor. And just to get the chance to hang out and talk with you for 2 hours is actually great. And I have such profound respect for what you're doing. And I think even more so now that I know where we are in the country and where the challenges reside in trying to keep these stories going. And I hope that you will, and I hope that you'll find strength in it. And I hope that you're helping a lot of people. You helped me. You reaffirmed a lot of things with me. And I think this show is far from over. But
I hope from your lips, I hope.
So are the challenges,
Yeah, no. I was on I think you were on his podcast, Andy Stumps, and he said something to me. I was on his podcast, and he said, what did he say to me? He said, what do you think the future of it? I go, I really don't know, man. I said, he said, yeah, you'll probably wax and wane. And that's kind of how I feel with the play now. I feel like I'm starting to wax and wane with it. It's just trying to find, I don't know, a footing, but maybe that's, I don't know, that's part of the journey, right? At some point the play has to end, right? And in some way, it can't go on forever. Nothing goes on forever. Nothing goes on forever. So, I pray to God, and I'm sure I'm a big believer. I'm not religious, but I pray every night, and I try to ask permission. And I'll tell you another thing. I'll give you another I'll share a piece of advice with you because you share so much with me. But I believe in this. When I shared this with Andy, and he fucking thought I was nuts, but when I had so many no's when I was creating the play, so many people told me, I don't want to hear that. No one wants to hear that. Well, what do you want to do with it? I had more no's than you can put in a box. And I would pray every night, and I would say, I'm so grateful that this play is crazy successful, and it's been applauded by so many people. I can't believe the director I found is this amazing. And I would say these cantations, right, at night before I would go to bed. And I'm doing it now with my book, and I'm doing it now off-Broadway play. I would just share that with you because I don't know what it does. I don't know. I think you're right. I think it kicks something off in the subconscious where because people talk about this when you're sleeping, that, you can talk to your subconscious, and you can kind of program it so that when you're awake, your conscience has been programmed. I know I'm getting kind of fucking crazy.
No, not at all. I buy into all that shit, bro.
Okay. So, man, so if you could,
I appreciate that. That's a good note.
Yeah. Yeah. Just because you'll have your doubts and you just, say, going to bed every night saying, I can't believe how amazing this Tampa performance was. It was
Do you think when you're done with your show, you'll like just stand it down, or will you license it for local performances, or what do you think you'll do?
Yeah, I don't know. So I've been approached by a lot of colleges to do it. My biggest fear, Scott, with it is I take so much responsibility in the voices, because I know some of the families now that are in play. And I
get it, bro. I get it.
My biggest fear is if I license it and some college decides to do some wacky story with it, because they, it's a great play, like Last Out. It's a great play so in college, everyone's always looking for multi-character plays because you have so many kids. You need, that's why every college does chorus line, because it's, you need like a lot of roles, or A Few Good Men. It's another play that people don't know about. It's got fuckloads of roles. But I'm terrified of some college grabbing it and doing it in some fucking wacky way that, in my mind, dishonors the voice.
Yeah, I hear you.
Of Jeffrey. Like, I know Jeffrey's family. Like, I don't want that letter being done in a fucking fucked up way, Yeah. I don't want, we're gonna make it all this now. We're gonna turn it into a musical. No, it's not a musical. And I know you can say you can actually publish your play, make rules, but people break those fucking rules all the time. And and how you're gonna watch it. So I think I want to turn it into I think the ending is to turn it into a film and a book, and then probably license it, eventually let it go, and try to find a way to create some really strict parameters around it. But I get approached a lot.
I bet. I bet.
So, and you will too with Last Out. You'll start getting universities to start approaching you, say, hey, can we do? And here's another thing I would be very careful with. Don't give your material out to anybody. Like, you'll get people who'll say, can we, we're working on a story. My classroom in college, we're working on a story regarding PTS. We were wondering if we can use some of your material, or our university would love to work on some of your monologues. Because once that shit gets out, it's gone. And you have no control of it. And then people, they steal your language, and you should I take a lot of, I don't let people record me unless it's me, like, unless I have some really strict rules, because like, I don't let people put my shows from the Kennedy Center are on YouTube, because that was the only way they would let me do it. They're like, everything we do is televised and it stays on YouTube, the Kennedy Center, but they're the only ones. I wouldn't let anybody else record me, because people steal. And they'll steal your work and they'll steal your material. So just be very vigilant on anybody asking, hey, can we do some of your material? Because I would just say, no, don't do it.
All right. Good advice, bro.
All right, bro. So tell us, as we close out, dates, the name of the play, where it's at, time, and then where people can find you at, man.
Yeah. So thanks, man. The play world premiere, December 17 through 20, Ybor City at the HCC Performing Arts Center. If you go to TF, that's Tango Foxtrot Pineapple.org. Tickets are available there for any of those nights. I think it starts at 7. I'm pretty sure. We'll do a talk back afterwards. It's about 75 minutes. If you want to learn about that or any of the stuff that I'm doing on storytelling or any of that stuff, scottmann.com. And then most recently, we've started a really cool community of storytellers and human connection folks on the platform School, SKOOL, and it's called Scott Mann School of Rooftop Leadership. So if you go to that platform, it's free to join. Really a lot of cool people in there just collaborating and hanging out, talking about rapport building and active listening. It's a great community. All of that you can find at scottmann.com.
Thanks, brother. Man, you're everywhere, dude. You're everywhere. Thanks, man. Well,
thanks, pal.
Great talking to you. We'll be in touch soon, man. God bless. And
all right. Have a good one, Doug. See you.
If you liked this episode, please leave a review. And if you'd like to hear more episodes like this, please subscribe to the channel. And to every veteran and to every military family, I thank you for your service and your incredible sacrifice to this nation.